what's going on, everybody? Today is June 7th, 2024, and you are listening to and watching the Daily AI Show live. My co-hosts today are Jyunmi, Brian, Andy, and I am Beth. And today is our Circle Back recap show where we take a look back at the previous 2 weeks of shows because AI is changing every day, and sometimes there's more to say. So just quick to get our co-hosts oriented. In the last 2 weeks of shows, we talked about custom GPTs, OpenAI's new instructions for that. We talked about Marcus Sheridan's 3 AI questions that all businesses need to be asking. We talked about data analytics, is it dead, and HoloMod analytics. We talked about Google Gemini for workspace, so Google Gemini within the Google apps. We talked about Siri and Alexa. We had our prediction show. We talked about AI energy costs and our top 5 tools, and then 2 weeks of news, which is of course like half a year. So, who's got something in that or something else that you want to talk about?
I've got a bunch of science stories that I didn't get to during the news day, and just to call back, Andy brought up on that news day about how we can use AI to decode dog vocalizations. But I want to go one step further and give all the other good news from the science side. There's also one of the universities came out with a new model that allows computer to understand human emotions. And so we've kind of seen that with a couple of offerings out there where it's supposed to be like an emotional intelligence layer between or interface between the humans and the rest of their AI. But this one specifically focuses on using mathematical psychology or the principles of mathematical psychology. And so it allows the AI to adapt its behavior and guide like irritated or anxious users in different ways and things like that. So I thought that was super interesting. We could have more AI helpers walk us through something like if I get really mad at IT, they can the AI can be like, "Whoa, buddy, take it easy. They're just doing their job." Of course, I only get mad because I did it for years. The next story is research from MIT developed a technique to combine robotics training data across various domains, modalities, and tasks using generative AI models. So their idea was that they could create this combined strategy from various data sets to help the robot learn new tasks, especially in unseen environments or just, unknown variables and things like that, which kind of lends to this idea that we were talking about, how generalists can interact with AI and learn how to use AI to up their skills and how they interact and their productivity and things like that. But also, it seems to there's evidence seems to work in the reverse too, so that robots can learn because we talk about AI being built and thinking or to learn like how humans do. So this research looks like robots will benefit from being generalists as well. And then finally, the last one I have is how children's visual experience may hold the key to better computer vision training, right? So from Penn State, they came up with a novel human-inspired approach to training artificial intelligence systems to identify objects and navigate their surroundings. And they think that it could set the stage for development of more advanced AI systems to explore extreme environments or distance worlds and those kinds of things. And this kind of goes back to one episode where we were talking about Jan LeCun's statements about using object-driven AI as opposed to large language models. And so this seems to be in the same vein, or at least that's how I read it anyways. But it's that building the environment and learning through experiencing that environment, as opposed to just, let me give you every book in the world, And those are the main things that I wanted to cover, because I know we didn't get a chance. That particular news episode was jam-packed that day.
So that's really key, that learning from the world and being able to engage in the world, because and yes, Jan, and we may end up doing a show in the future, because he was very colorful in his in his talk at Vivatech. But the idea that in order to continue to train in order to continue to train large language models and AI, that we need to continue to create data first and then have it engage in the data. This idea is a little bit more of it's creating its own data by engaging with the world, right? Or perhaps is able to discern the data from other people's engagement in the world, that it doesn't have to be something that is written down or recorded or that kind of thing. And I find that really interesting.
Yeah, I think it brings up a good point too, Beth, about just the data in general. I know we had data analytics show and been thinking a lot about that, but even with the newest advances, Perplexity, which by the way, I'd love for you to talk about what you built it for a page for the Daily Eye Show that you were sharing with our Slack channel. But this idea of, models being trained on models, in the Perplexity situation, we know that these are SEO searchable links. And if Perplexity is building the pages off of doing high ranking Google searching, that's then feeding the Google searching for other people who then find the Perplexity page. Or in the example of, we were talking about 2 days ago about the robots and how they're in these virtual twin digital environments where they're learning there first. And so this whole idea of creating the data that then you train on, I think there's so much there in the medical space and everything else, but it also, I don't know if it's a whole other show or not. It just makes me nervous, concerned. I feel like there should be more talking about, at what point is that a good idea if it's just eating itself, especially in the search area. I don't know that makes as much of a difference in a closed system like training robots as it concerns me with a Perplexity issue.
It's a really good point. And I have to assume that some people are looking at that because it's sort of glaringly obvious in that ping pong kind of way. And in terms of what that last study was talking about, I think that's sort of what being able to have a different experience every time you're in an environment, right? So Brian often gives an example of eating oatmeal for breakfast, right? Because that happens every day, and he does it every day, right? But that doesn't mean that there aren't tiny nuances of shift that Brian's brain is just learning from each time. And the robot next to Brian can be learning also from that, or the robot next to Brian who's coming into the kitchen to do that in 2028 for you. That kind of thing, being able to engage in real-time live changing information. We do know that GPT's 4.0 model is likely to include that. That's one of the things. It's going to move up from vision that you upload a photo to or take a screenshot to something that is live. Karl, did you say that you had heard that some people have that now, that they have the live camera?
I saw the camera. I don't think they have the vision yet.
Got it. Okay.
So I saw them with the camera, with the phone app, and then the camera button, which they could do. So,
got it. Okay. Andy, you got anything you want to share from the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I'm going to do a mini dive on something that came up in the last couple of weeks, which was first announced by Anthropic, and that was their ability to identify in the deep neural network, Claude's, that exactly where certain representations of concepts existed, right? And then today or yesterday, OpenAI announced that they have also done the same thing, examining using a process called sparse autoencoders. And I'm going to try to explain why it's hard to see where these things happen inside a deep neural network in less than a couple of minutes here, and how sparse autoencoders work. So the problem is that, like in our brain, a single neuron, if you watch it with an fMRI or by analogy in the deep neural network, if you're looking into which of the neurons in a deep neural network are involved in a certain concept, single neurons will be firing for multiple concepts. Like they are kind of networked together in odd ways, so that this, the technical term for this is polysemantic superposition. Polysemantic meaning like a different concept, semantic meaning the underlying meaning, like polysemantic superposition. It's on the same neuron and they fire it, and so you can't really distinguish or differentiate which neurons are involved. So sparse autoencoders take a deep neural network and they say, okay, you're not allowed to use all of your neurons. You've got to use only a limited number of them. And this is related, by the way, to this concept that we find really fascinating called sparse representation, which is a way that you can, use a limited number of terms in a prompt to allow the deep neural network to regenerate something that's around those terms. And anyway, that's a sidebar. That's going to take up 30 seconds there. So sparse just means you put some constraints on the neural network so that it has to use a fewer number. And both Anthropic and now OpenAI have used sparse autoencoding, a separate neural network that is limited in its ability to use every neuron in its network. And that has allowed them to start to see how concepts cluster inside the deep neural network, which advances our ability to interpret how a deep neural network is actually encoding the information that it gets in its training set. So there, new progress by the major frontier models in understanding how these deep neural networks capture so much information with, not a small number, trillions of neurons in their deep neural networks.
Nice. So if you're not deep into the weeds like we are, and we're a pretty exclusive bunch, I think, that are as far deep as we are, you may not have heard of these of the language that we're using for talking about this concept, but you may have heard of Golden Gate Claude. And Golden Gate Claude was the result, or once they mapped it, then they found that they could literally tweak the way that Anthropic's Claude interacted. And it was a little like somebody who, well, it was a lot like somebody who had one thing they wanted to talk about. And you could sort of move them off the path and then you could come back. So there's a lot of there's a lot of implications about being able to set that map up and being able to fine tune or tweak the ways that we train large language models in terms of where it goes and where it doesn't go. Right now, the main way of training a large language model to not go somewhere is human feedback, the rated human feedback, right? So I don't like that. I do like this. This gives a little more fine tune, I would say. Excellent. Yeah, Brian.
I was just going to say, speaking of sort of fine tuning, one of the shows we did was about the new rules for custom GPTs. It was almost 2 weeks ago. That was after OpenAI released some new guidelines on how they felt like you could prompt and write instructions for a custom GPT. And since we've had that show, I've used that document multiple times over, and I'll give anybody a kind of an easy win here. You could actually just link to that document if you're really not sure where to start. If you haven't really messed around with custom GPTs, but maybe you want to dip your toe in the water, all you need to do is tell ChatGPT in a normal thread, hey, go look at this document. Go look at this URL link. I want I want to put these ideas and concepts into this prompt. Here's the type of custom GPT I think I want to build because it solves this problem. And then go maybe 2 or 3 more steps deeper into that. What it'll do then is then use that document that OpenAI has created and pull a lot of those in. For example, examples, for example. And what I mean by that is that one of the things I wasn't doing was when I would set up in the past, when I would set up my markdown method, how I write these prompts, typically I would bunch the examples together and say, here are the examples of the output. And one of the things I've really learned and adapted from with these new guidelines are actually getting the examples closer to the subtasks that I'm actually working. And that may seem obvious, but at least for me, that's not the way I would normally do it. So now, if you look at that document, it talks about triggers, and then it talks about instructions, and then it talks about examples, and it repeats that process over and over again. So take any 5-step process that you might have, that you might want to create a custom GPT. I want to, making an article or writing a blog would be a good example. It's because just if we broke this down into human terms, we would obviously need to research it. We would have to write an outline. We would have to figure out what our intro statements are, our pivots, our hooks, these types of things. So there might be multiple steps, and you could try to put it in one prompt, but ultimately what you want the custom GPT to do is to break this down into steps and say, well, the first thing I need to do is research it. Go out and research it. Then step 2, step 3, step 4, and they're going to build on each other as a prompt sheet. Well, now, if you look at the way they have these instructions and what OpenAI is suggesting for writing instructions, and when I say instructions, I mean broadly the full instructions of the custom GPT. But now under each one of those subtasks, if you look at the way they break it down, there's the trigger, meaning what just happened in order to say if this, then that type situation. What just happened previously, that's going to trigger me, the AI, to do this next step. Then what is the instruction I should take? Then what's an example of what I would say to the user to run this instruction? And I will tell you that does a lot for making a better user experience on the back end. So you might just be creating custom GPTs for yourself, but if you're like me, you're creating them for other people to use. And of course, in those cases, you can't just lightly brush over, oh, I don't care if it gets it wrong. I know what it means. That no longer applies if it's something that has to work for a variety of users all the time and you want it to be a good product. So I just want to bring this back up because it's not something I was necessarily doing when we did the show, but it's something I've really been putting in place. And I'm just, now that I've watched it go through hundreds of iterations and tweaks and fine tuning, I can tell you from my perspective, at least from having run a lot of these custom GPTs, this is a better way to do it. I absolutely see an improvement in the output. Specifically, what does the user see and what is that user experience truly like on the back end? And that's so important to me, obviously, because I want these custom GPTs to be really, really helpful. So I just wanted to bring that up because that was one of our topics.
Thanks, Brian. Really appreciate it. Yes. And I don't remember if everyone was on 4.0 when we did that show, because what is time in the age of AI? But now we know that that everyone's custom GPT is on 4.0 and that it's able to be accessed by the free tier. So you can go and you can explore the custom GPTs. You have fewer conversations than if you paid.
Karl, was there something in that you wanted to cover today in particular? Because if not, I've got a couple more.
No, not really. I just wanted to reiterate what my prediction was for Monday, which is I have to stand by it, although there's some reports that won't happen, that Sam Altman will be coming on stage at WWDC. Also that iOS, like ChatGPT will either replace or power Siri, as well as, I don't even know if this is going to exist in some form, but some sort of ChatGPT search is going to be announced there that I think is going to replace Google as the default search on Apple devices. I haven't heard anything about that. So those are the 3 big things that I was predicting.
That's some big predictions there.
Yeah.
I guess we'll find out. We'll find out Monday and talk about it on Tuesday.
Well, there's one more, and it's not really a prediction. So it's going to be, I don't know if anyone saw today, it's going to be called Apple Intelligence. That's what all the reports are coming out today.
Okay.
I guess it's the play on AI, Apple Intelligence, and those like,
Right.
yeah.
That's good. And all of these advances are coming in iOS 18, right? And just for reference, I just got iOS 17.5 last night. So it's not going to, Monday will be the announcements. We won't get all those things for some period of time. And there's 17.6 and 17.8 or whatever. And then eventually we'll get 18. And that's where these things will occur.
Yeah, I've not been a fanboy, fangirl person who has been following this stuff. So I was like, oh, Monday. And Karl schooled me like, yeah, Beth, this is an announcement. It's for the developers. Then we get it in September. Like,
also, whatever they announce on Monday, some of it may just not run unless you get the brand new iPhone 16 in September because of the hardware situation. So you might be able to use some of it as part of the new iOS 18 whenever that rolls out. But I would imagine also parts of it, based on what we know from Microsoft and their AI plus PC or Copilot plus PC and stuff like that, it may also depend on what 16 can run, and that may ultimately depend on how good these new features are for you. So that'll be interesting as well.
Well, funny enough, Brian, I was just looking at Mac rumors, and one of the things they say is requires 15 Pro or newer M1 chip for iPads or Macs. Again, not sure if that's all of it, just some of it. But if you're right. Like just like the Mac OS desktop app, the OpenAI desktop app, you have to be running an M1 chip. So,
yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think you brought up a good point, Andy, and I think everyone iterated this. So what would everyone say is the hype cycle buffer or delay? So announcement and what, plus 6 months? Is that what was that what you would estimate?
Is that what it is now? Because I remember earlier when for example, when custom GPTs came out, it was within a week, or when it wasn't that long until everybody got it. But the announcement with OpenAI, when was that?
That was the end of May. Right.
So, okay, if it was the end of May, okay, maybe we're getting a little too impatient to go, because I'm looking at it's been 2 weeks with the deflated, with the demo. 3 weeks ago they said it's supposed to roll out in several weeks. So if they said several months, I can understand, but several weeks, like, what does that mean? 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 2 months? Like that, I think that's where people are getting a little frustrated. So maybe there was some news Monday or Tuesday that starts rolling some of this stuff out. Maybe.
That's right.
Okay, so you kind of scared me. I have an iPhone 15 Pro Max, and I was worried, oh, damn, I should not have upgraded so soon. But in fact, the iPhone 15 Pro has the A17 Pro chip in it, which has a 6-core CPU and 4 efficiency cores, a 6-core GPU, and a 16-core neural engine. So it's ready. Now the 15, you'll be ready to take whatever they're adding sometime later.
All right, Andy, that reminds me real quick. Andy, did you sort of talked about it at the beginning of yesterday or at the end of yesterday's show? Can you give us a quick recap on the Rabbit R1 and now how you're actually using it? It's not a paperweight anymore.
I don't see it near here.
Hey guys, it's off doing agentic work for you. So that's what
So here's what I found. There are limits on the large language model that is in the Rabbit compared to ChatGPT 4.0. And I've run into some things where I had to turn back to ChatGPT 4.0. But having the little Rabbit R1 here next to my desk, and I have my phone next to my desk as well, and I'm looking at the screen, if I want to just quickly ask a question of AI, it's so easy to pick it up, push to talk, and get the verbalized answer. And that one usability factor, the push to talk, instantly available and speaking back to me, instead of, by contrast, and I mentioned this in a post-show comment about it, with an iPhone, I've got to open it up, which means I got to put my code in, and then I've got to go to ChatGPT, which is, on one of the main menus there, but I open it, and then I've got to click again. It's 4 or 5 clicks in before I can even voice my query. With the Rabbit, it's instantaneous, and it also has some limitations. I asked it about first aid for a 2nd-degree burn, and it literally refused to give me that information, insisting again and again that I get immediate medical attention. Now, it wasn't me who got burned, but then I went to ChatGPT 4.0, 6 clicks later, here's what you do.
Yeah, no, it's such a good point. So we've got some comments happening. Didn't Humane just do a recall or something? We talked about this on the news show. Andrew, they didn't fully do a recall, but they definitely said stop using the charging case because it may catch on fire.
Yeah, and by the way, in addition to that embarrassment about basically it's a recall in the sense that they are recalling you from using it. They have been looking for some time for someone to purchase them, and there are not any buyers.
HP.
They
That
reached
was one of the ones that they turned to, and HP declined.
I was like,
Wow.
I haven't heard from HP in a while. That could,
somebody's going to pick it up for a real deal, a real steal here before too long. It's that the price is going to bottom out. Somebody's going to go, you know what? At least the tech that they've built is worth it. The IP behind the tech or whatever, and we'll take it from here. Somebody will buy them, but I think the price is going to be so much lower after all these.
But will they buy them though? Because if you got in a month or two, OpenAI has the voice, has the agentic features, doesn't that kind of render the entire stack moot?
If they transferred over to like glasses, or something like that, and they used that technology and moved it over, you could hold your hand up in front of your glasses. I think maybe there's something there. The idea for me, obviously, but the idea of the pin for me was part of the problem. It was heavy. You could see it pulling down with the shirts. It just didn't. What do? Move it out to the outside of the jacket? These kind of things, whatever. But I do think maybe there's some redeemable, tech there for the way you hold your hand out front. And maybe there's something they can do with like glasses or something. I don't know, but maybe you're right, Karl. Maybe that's it, and it's just gonna go bankrupt.
Right.
Maybe we can buy
it. Maybe so we know that things get as tech advances, things get faster, better, and smaller. And I can see a use for like a ring or something like that would also be like glasses where you would be able to like tap something. Now it's like shining on your other hand. I don't know what that is, but I agree, Brian. We also have a concern. Brian is not driving. We would like to break this news. He is passengering at the moment, and therefore we have deemed this safe. Safety.
No, in fact, I'm in my office, and this is just a green screen 3D background AI I've been working on. I'm not ready to release the technology or the name of it, but I was hoping that it looked realistic. I tell you what, very hard to get this AI seatbelt in here, though, and make it look realistic. And get the sound of the car coming through. I think that's been a real trick. But
will this be the latest update to Thumper?
Yes, I'm saying Thumper is actually driving. That's the real breaking.
Not real trees.
Thumper should buy Humane. Thumper should buy Humane, right?
And they should buy Humane. I will talk to him about that for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Mirrors over here, but no.
Okay, I have another one that's related to advances in the capabilities of large language models, and it has relevance to the correction of hallucinations. And I'll give you an example. So Hugging Face published on Hugging Face the Fine Web data set, which is a curated set of data from the web, was shown. They did a paper, a really long paper, which I haven't even finished reading because it's that long and dense. But The FineWeb data set is one that goes through a data pipeline that really cleanses the data from the internet to focus on things that are truly valuable to the training of that large language model. So, one of the things that Gemini got hammered for was, it telling people that they could eat rocks. Well, that happens when they try to dig into it, where that came from. It's just that it was on the open web. I think it actually happened to be an Onion article or something, like some parody. And in giving unsupervised training data, or doing unsupervised training with data that's like inclusive of things that are not sort of qualified, legitimate, truth-bearing sources, you get these representations inside the model that are not necessarily what you want to surface if you're looking for truthiness in the results. So the FineWeb data set and a subset of that called FineWeb-EDU, which is trained only on scholarly and authoritative education-oriented articles, those now show better performance than the other large language models on reasoning and accuracy. So you can see that there's all these components to the building of AI. And one of them that we refer to constantly on the show is the quality of your data. And by training the original frontier models on just anything that was out there published on the web, there's a lot of junk in that data. Now, FineWeb is articulating the data through an evaluative and filtering process in a way that FineWeb data set is much better at training models and will hopefully reduce some of the weirdness that happens when, people try to break a model by asking it things and so on. So FineWeb data set, that's a new publication that you should consider.
Awesome. That's it. Yes. I feel like we're going full circle, right? Like we started at, just ask it anything, right? Like just have a conversation, ask it back and forth, you tweak slightly. Then there were all these pieces of information about how to write really good prompts. Then and actually, Brian and I know we had few shot prompting within the how to write really good prompts, but that did not seem to be where the dominant ideas were going. And now we're coming back around to, you can just like have a bare thing and then really good examples. And that can be perhaps as effective as spending a really long time writing really good prompts. If you can give it some time to train on really good examples for you.
I did have a question for everybody. Brian sort of brought this up when we did our top 5 tools show. But I wanted to know, what's your new favorite or top new tool? One that you didn't, that you hadn't been using, but you just started using, and now it seems, it might become one of your top.
Oh, that silence is reflective of my position, which is I think that the field is getting thinned out now down to the central ones that have become real utilitarian services. So I'm struggling to answer that one because I think both familiarity and proficiency with the certain tools that you already use and have found useful is going to narrow the field. Think of the thousands and thousands of apps out there, and there's new ones coming out every day in the newsletters. I just don't have time to go after those when ChatGPT is so competent across many domains.
I was just going to say, if you are the kind of person who's looking for new tools, I will give a shout out to Matt Wolf. He has a great YouTube channel, but he also has a great website called futuretools.io. And if you go on there, one of the things he has is all sorts of new tools, AI tools are on there. Some are really basic ones, some are much more complex. And they get upvotes on there from his followers or users or whatever on that website. So that's a really great resource. And just to answer your quick question, Jimmy, I'm kind of like Andy. I think I don't necessarily have a ton of new tools. I will tell you, I just circled back to beautiful.ai because my wife is putting together a presentation she'll be up in New York soon doing an AI presentation in dietetics. and nutrition. And I was less impressed with Beautiful this time around than last time, but I'm not really sure. Maybe I had unrealistic expectations, but so that's what I just circled back to. And then I'll give a quick shout out to our sponsor of our first newsletter that's coming out on Sunday, which is Arbor. And I have dipped my toe a little bit into what they're doing, and they have some pretty cool tools as well, really focused on storytelling. So I'm excited to really dig in deeper with them as well.
Say again the tool that you referenced.
Beautiful AI.
Beautiful.ai is a tool for making presentations. And they make beautiful slides. I'll say that, like, even when we were all said and done, my wife was done with it. It's a very good looking slide deck. And honestly, if that's their main thing, it's great. There is a lot of AI involved where it'll help you set up. But whereas we were looking for a little bit more help with like getting maybe 20 slides set up to start with, it does okay. It'll give you like 9. It's a good starting point. My wife still had to do a little bit of manipulating, and some things weren't like naturally where you would expect it to be, but still a good tool. Is it an AI tool? I mean, it has AI features to it, but it's not like it's fully AI or anything like that. There's still a lot of manual input into it, stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I've gone for those two, but I'm with Andy. Gamma.app is my preferred presentation AI. And it is not the new tool, and I did mention it, Jyunmi, but in answer to your question, going back to the Gemini apps in specifically Gmail. I don't use it in any other thing, but it is so good in Gmail. It's so much better than the search feature in Gmail that I'm just very excited about it. Because, yes, confession, I'm one of those people who has a ridiculously high number of emails in my Gmail account. Cool. Are there any last things?
Yeah. Has anyone seen? I'm sure you've all seen the. I don't know. You call it Chinese Sora, like Kling. I can't remember. I can't.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
You can sign up. You can actually get it if you provide a mainland China number. I was trying to find how you potentially access this, because it is available to people. Like, you can actually go use it, which kind of irritates a bunch of other people saying, okay, well, if this is out, why isn't Sora out, and so on. And I think this does raise a really big question in the security aspect, is like, okay, you have our tools that are kind of slowly being released, and just from a North American perspective. But then you have other players around the world who are racing, and their definition of security is just based on what their government feels like pushing out or going up against. So that's the question, right? It's like, well, if you stop, delay, add regulations, you have other countries that have no such, they don't have any inkling to do any of that. So it's an interesting point, and Kling is a very, very good example of that, where I'm sure we can all find ourselves how to get access to this if we really tried.
Right. Absolutely. And wow, those videos are comparable to the videos that you can see, are definitely comparable to Sora. Some look better in some ways, but also it's cherry picked, right? Like, so we're not in it. We can't do that. We can't get in yet. None of us have Chinese phone numbers yet. We will let you know when and if we get one. Okay. So thanks everybody I think we'll wrap it up here. Thanks for joining us. This has been our Friday recap show. You're listening and watching the Daily AI Show live. And we have a newsletter coming out. So if you go to the dailyaishow.com and sign up for a newsletter, you will be one of the first people. And if you do it before Sunday, June 9th, you'll get a special toy surprise inside, which we will reveal when we send it to you. The other thing that we're doing is we are moving toward 1,000 subscribers in YouTube. So if you are on the live stream or engaging this after the fact, please smash that subscribe button. please like the broadcast. It really helps us out. All right. Next week, we are talking about Reuters report about generative AI. Tuesday, we're going to be talking about whatever Apple talked about on Monday, because we're all looking forward to that. Thursday, we're talking about frontier AI models. Can they keep growing 5x a year, which is the current rate? And Friday, we're doing our review of Canva. Canva just had their thing, and they've updated all their AI. And Wednesday, of course, will be all the news that we're going to cover from last Wednesday to next Wednesday. All right. Thanks, everybody. It's Friday. Have a good weekend. Thanks for joining.
Aloha.